Leslie Van Houten got paroled from prison yesterday after many appearances in front of the parole board. California Governor Gavin Newsom let her out. So one of Charlie's followers is going to be making the rounds. Now, this might be my favorite Charles Manson history clip. The Parole one's really good, but this one does a much better job of the background and where Charlie came from and why he went to power. Shows him playing guitar in prison, and it's just as goofy as the Geraldo one, but just better overall. The Geraldo one's a better straight interview. This one is a better overall history. So you get two clips from February 4th and February 19th, 1991 on the show Hard Copy. So get your Charlie on. When you get to the bottom, go back to the top of the slide. You sit and you go for a ride and you get to the bottom and you do it again. Yeah.
Family begins in 1967.
He said, geez, these little girls running around just about asking for it. It's not the same world I left from, you know, and he says it's just unbelievable, a convict's dream.
I went down on the Haight and I seen all these young kids. I was going to sing in the clubs. And I had learned to sing these kind of songs. The boat rides on the lake. And I went over and Ray Lee told me, he says, man, you can't do anything with that. He said, they're out there playing rock and roll.
You say yes, I say no.
Now, Manson needed money. He prowled the hippie enclaves looking for a woman to live with and live off, ending up on the campus in Berkeley. The University of California here in Berkeley was seething in the late 1960s with rebellion against the Vietnam War and authority in general. Charles Manson came here, saw all of it, but ignored the politics. He had other things on his mind. Specifically, a university librarian named Mary Bruner. She didn't know it at the time, but she was the first member of the Manson family. Lynette Squeaky Frome was the second. When Manson seduced Squeaky, he bragged, I am the god of sex. Then, Manson put the family on the road. The family traveled and lived in a Volkswagen bus, cruising the California coast from Big Sur to Los Angeles. Hippie girls were recruited with the promise of free drugs, free sex, and what Manson said was free thinking.
He was kind of like their psychologist, and he'd listen to them and then tell them what their problems were, and this struck a responsive chord.
That receptive person interacts with that, and then the drug or isolation or certain sexual practices such as Manson exposed them to sort of put them under his influence.
Manson discovered he could influence his followers best with the hallucinogenic drug, LSD.
When your head explodes into like an oversized warm balloon, you nod for a few minutes from overstimulation, you're wired for 3 days.
The Manson family took countless acid trips, but Manson himself indulged only occasionally. Charlie didn't want to be out of control, he wanted to be in control.
If you happen to have the kind of personality, the kind of mind that is inclined towards a lack of morality and inclined towards hatred, the intensity of this drug's effect can interact with your instability and your anger.
As the family grew, one girl became known as the angriest, Susan Atkins. She was the one who stabbed Sharon Tate.
She met Manson in the Haight-Ashbury district, walking down the street, handed him a flower, and he invited her back to his apartment.
Patricia Krenwinkel became a stabbing, slashing murderess, but in the beginning she was just a beach girl.
Krenwinkel is a very homely person, and Manson paid attention to her, and there were very few men that ever paid attention to her, and so she got sucked in by that method.
The prettiest of the Manson girls, Leslie Van Houten, left a young, handsome lover for Charlie and later killed for him. But in 1967, violence was still in the family's future.
I don't think he was contemplating murder when he formed this family. It was love, LSD, etc. But he started seeing all the control that he had over these people.
Then Manson's dreams of peace and love began turning into nightmares of hatred and violence.
I know your fears. I see through your minds.
Inside the mind of Manson and his followers, past and present, continues in a moment. In 1969, the night Sharon Tate was murdered, the 60s flower power wilted. The flower children grew up with a chilling jolt of reality. Our Doug Bruckner continues his investigation of the real Charles Manson.
You say you want a revolution, well, you know.
The young people of the 60s were driven by drugs, protest, but most of all by music. And the Manson family was right in the groove. Charles Manson wanted to be a rock star, and he became a disciple of the Beatles. When the Beatles' drug-inspired White album came out in 1968, Manson made it his testament. The Beatles and Charles Manson saw life differently. The group had no idea when they cut the raw rock track Helter Skelter that they were recording rhythms for mass murder. For a time, the Manson family actually penetrated the world of rock stars, but their entree wasn't through anyone connected to the Beatles.
One time who was there, who knocks on the door but Dennis Wilson. So the dealer, he introduced him, hey, you two should know each other anyway, you're both into music.
2 weeks later, he comes back from a recording session at about 2 in the morning, and Manson's at his door. Dennis walks in. Manson had moved his family in. They were smoking marijuana, eating cookies, and Dennis thought it was kind of a fun situation. They lived with Dennis for several months.
But by the time they'd moved out of Wilson's gated mansion, the Beach Boy had lost most of his gold records and his Rolls Royce. It was the Beach Boys drummer who took Charles Manson to this canyon house, a fateful outing that set the stage for the murders of 5 people. The house would later be rented by actress Sharon Tate and her new husband, Roman Polanski. When Manson visited, record producer Terry Melcher lived here.
Manson is a frustrated singer-guitarist, and Manson prevailed upon Melcher to record him commercially. Melcher did give him an interview, an audition. He wasn't very impressed with him. He gave him $50 and he walked away.
I had 1,000 dreams like sharp knives on sewing machines, and my mind just raced away.
Was music the motive for the murder of Sharon Tate and the others? Did Manson send the killers here to get even? There are clues to that mystery in the prison video. Manson still dreams of winning acceptance for his music.
I'd like to get back outside and just be anybody, someone just like you. Or if you don't want that, let me go back and play some music and walk around where I just came from. I was doing this when I got arrested. It's how I express myself. I'm tired of this caveman trip. I'm gonna take over everything. I already did. We put it in motion.
Manson's murder plot was put into motion on the Spahn Ranch shortly after Manson's musical career fell apart. There was a sinister new face around now, Charles Watson, Tex. He'd been a high school athlete, a straight arrow. Now at Spahn Ranch, Tex started to say, I am Charlie, and Charlie is me.
Tex Watson would hold training classes on how to murder, how to stab somebody, that you didn't just put the knife in, that when you put the knife in, you pulled up on the knife. And we found a number of the stab wounds in the Tate LaBianca murders where the knife had been put into a victim and somebody had pulled up on it to do more damage.
This was the site of the Spahn Ranch. The buildings have been long since cleared away. In the 60s, there were many communes like the Manson family with drugs and open sex. Unlike the others, the Manson family's priority was to make war, not love. The family had an arsenal of guns and knives. In the summer of '69, the time to use them was getting near.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
On July 20th, 1969, the world stopped to watch a man walk on the moon. 3 weeks later, with everyone's eyes still fixed on the heavens, Charles Manson announced to the family his vision of hell on earth.
The evil mystique of Charles Manson lies in the eyes of gullible, desperate followers. But a frightening reality, there are many still out there. More in a moment. Hundreds of women write to Charles Manson in his jail cell today, some barely in their teens. A look at the bizarre Manson spell as our Doug Bruckner's investigation continues.
In August 1969, Charles Manson had never felt more powerful. His family had just slaughtered actress Sharon Tate and 4 others. They hadn't ignited a race war, but they'd made headlines around the world and apparently gotten away with it. Police were baffled. Manson had used sex, drugs, and mind control to make the family do his bidding, to kill each member's ego. But he was betrayed by a girl whose ego couldn't be killed, the one he named after a Beatles song.
Sexy Sadie, what have you done?
Sexy Sadie's real name was Susan Atkins. She was under arrest for the murder of musician Gary Hinman, who Manson thought had burned him.
And while she was in custody in Silver Brand, she blabbed to 2 of her cellmates about Manson and the Tate LaBianca murders. When she was telling the 2 women this, Susan laughed and said that Sharon, who was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, was crying and just begging for her baby. She said, "All I want to do is have my baby. Please let me have my baby." She looked at Sharon in the eye and said, "Look, bitch, I don't care about you, and I don't care whether or not you're going to have a baby. You're going to die, and you better be ready, and I don't care a thing about it."
The trial in 1971 chilled America nearly as much as the murders, the family's street corner vigils, those X's cut into the foreheads.
The jury sentenced all of them to death. And then in 1972, in a case called Furman versus Georgia, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty, as it was then being carried out, was unconstitutional.
The unthinkable became possible. After 7 years behind bars, Charles Manson would become eligible for parole.
Why don't you guys let me out of here so I can walk around and do what I want to do? Ride around, just be whoever I was. I lost it. Couldn't remember my idea.
Manson's guards say he fantasizes about returning to, appropriately, Death Valley, where he was living on this desert ranch when he was arrested.
I live out in the desert for a good reason. You couldn't make it in the desert because you couldn't give up all your creature comforts. You couldn't give up all your pie doughs and your aerosol cans. But if everybody was to stop and go out into the desert and just walk in the desert and forget and go the other way.
And if Manson were released, there would be no shortage of young people willing to go the other way with him. Hard copy was shown Manson fan letters delivered to prison by the pound.
I sure hope the parole board was watching tonight. An angry and threatening, and the fatal vision killer confronted with sex letters. Tonight on Hard Copy, Charles Manson exclusive. A chilling jail cell interview. threatens hard copy reporter. Also tonight, Fatal Vision, a hard copy world exclusive. An enraged Charles Manson goes head-to-head with hard copy in his jail cell in an explosive, threatening, chilling 2.5-hour interview.
Do you want me to be the guy you're trying to make me? Do you want me to be the guy that orders people to die? Do you want me to be the dispensation of life and death?
Our Doug Bruckner head-to-head with the most notorious cult murderer of our time. And Charlie was not pleased.
I was surprised at your show and disappointed, actually.
You're talking about the hard copy program?
Yeah. I could see that on Current Affairs or Geraldo, but...
Sorry, Charlie. This is hard copy. The Sex Letters of Fatal Vision Killer, 1991. Hello and welcome. I'm Terry Murphy. That explosive head-to-head showdown with Charles Manson is something you can't miss. But before we get to it, there's the Fatal Vision Killer.
8 months. Is there anything you want me to do? Now, what do you want me to tell him?
That still sends chills up the American spine. He was angry at a hard copy story and pirated videos showing him smoking marijuana in a previous jail. Manson is 56 now and recently moved to a high-tech prison near Fresno, California. That's where he summoned our Doug Bruckner and producer Linda Bell Blue for this amazing showdown.
Reflection of children coming up in the grave.
This pirate prison video of Charles Manson was broadcast for the first time ever on hard copy 2 weeks ago. Puffing a marijuana cigarette, Manson talked about his family and sang his songs. But our program was hardly music to the ears of Charles Manson. He's outraged about it.
I'm upset with hard copy on this level, from this perspective. Other inmates come to me and they say, Charlie, we didn't like what they said. We know different. And all you people who keep putting that out on the air, I'm going to give you another reason why I'm here. I'm here to help you a little bit. Because the guy next door to me said, Charlie, I know you, and I like you, and you've helped me out of a few tight situations, and I owe you one. I said, what's that? He said, I seen that show on TV the other day, and that's wrong. I get out in 8 months. Is there anything you want me to do? Now, what do you want me to tell him? Do you want me to tell him to come and see you? Do you want me to be the guy you're trying to make me? Do you want me to be the guy that orders people to die? Do you want me to be the dispensation of life and death? You convicted me for dispensating life and death, man. The President of the United States can't even do that.
Manson was so angry with us that he rejected interview requests from Italy, Israel, and all over the U.S. in order to go face-to-face with a hard copy correspondent. What seemed to infuriate him most was our suggestion that music may have been the motive for the Manson family murders. Official speculation that Sharon Tate's house was targeted for mass murder because it was the place where record producer Terry Melcher had rejected Manson's songs.
The people around me wanted me to be what you call rock and roll singer. I wasn't even thinking of anything like that. Doris Day's son comes to me with the offer, and I say, okay, it sounds good.
You're saying that Terry Melcher misrepresented to you your possibilities as a singer and made false promises to you?
I wasn't in trade to be anything. I was what I am. I'm not trying to labor into someone else's opinion of what they think of me. I care less what other people think of me.
Hard copy isn't the only place where a music motive for the Manson murders is being discussed. We took a copy of last week's Star tabloid to Manson's cell block. The newspaper claims Manson was really after record producer Terry Melcher's girlfriend, Candace Bergen, not Sharon Tate. TV's Murphy Brown moved out of the Canyon house when actress Sharon Tate moved in.
And they're saying that you were actually after Candace Bergen because she was Terry Melcher's girlfriend.
Who's Candace Bergen?
Murphy Brown.
Murphy Brown, Kenneth Bergen.
I mean, I'm giving you a chance to respond, because how often do you get a chance to respond to this? Is the first time you've seen this?
Yeah, I don't.
This is just last week. I can't tell whether this makes you laugh or whether this makes you angry or whether you don't care
What
about
difference does it make? You've sold public opinion so much that it doesn't mean anything anyway. What is public opinion? You buy and sell it. What's it worth? Nothing.
Is it true?
True. True about what?
Is what they're printing here true? Is it true that you were after Candace Bergen?
I'm not after. Why would I be after anyone? Is that a waste of time? Who in the hell is Murphy Brown, man?
Candace Bergen.
I don't even know who Candace Bergen is. That's how dumb I am. I'm really dumb. You wouldn't believe how stupid I am. I'm a hillbilly.
In the 2.5 hours of this interview, Manson would return to his threats and reminders that he still had followers ready to obey him, as we'll see in a moment.
And believe me, all of my friends that used to be nice little gentle flower children, they are very mad and mean old witches now, you dig?
The aspect of Charles Manson is that he seemed to have some hidden power to make people kill for him. And in Doug Bruckner's interview, he wanted to remind everyone of that power.
More than 2 decades ago, prosecutors proved in court that Charles Manson turned these flower children into killers. All 3 are now serving life sentences. We reported prosecution charges that Manson used drugs to manipulate his women. Most effective, the hallucinogen, LSD.
That's another thing that I would like to chastise you for. You say I control the minds. How am I convicted as being your father? Your father's the one who controls the minds, and how can I control a mind any more than my mind has been controlled?
But you're aware that in the parole hearings that Krenwinkel, Atkins, Van Houten, Watson have all said, Charles Manson, through the use of LSD, controlled my mind and made me do the things that I did.
We'll just show you how silly that is. Anybody that knows anything about drugs, the only way drugs control your mind is they'll control your mind until you can get it. And then when you get it, then you're gone. You take the drugs and leave. No, LSD doesn't control anyone's mind. It may actually work in the opposite. It may uncontrol your mind. But control your mind for what? Control your mind for where?
Manson denies that he made these women killers, but he boasted to us about his continuing control of other family members and warned hard copy about them.
And I got a letter from a couple of my old ladies that just flew in from other places, and believe me, all of my friends that used to be nice little gentle flower children, they are very mad and mean old witches now, you dig? And they don't like a lot of the things that you people have been doing, see? We got a few helicopters going. We got Black Hawks, and we got Apaches. We got Captain Stereo and Uvaya. We got a lot of good things in this family.
But what about family members still in prison, like Charles Watson, the vicious Tex who did most of the stabbing and shooting in the 7 Tate LaBianca murders? Today, Watson is confined in a prison far away from Manson's, where he recently told a parole board he has found religion.
Charles Tex Watson has become a minister?
Praise the Lord.
You know about that?
If it works for him, you know, get on. If the wheel rolls, man, like, what can I say?
Would you like to join his congregation?
I'm already in his congregation, I thought. I've never had anything against Tex. Tex has been all right with me. Tex kept his word.
Tex Watson has a wife and 3 kids by way of conjugal visits and since he's been in prison, and that the policy here is that you don't have any physical contact with anybody, that you talk to him through a glass. How does it happen that Tex Watson has 3 kids and you don't even have any physical contact with anybody?
I guess Tex is smarter than I am. Tex is a pretty smart boy. He's got a college education. He reads and writes pretty good. All them guys are pretty good. If you're stupid in jail, man, you're locked up all the time. You got to be smart in jail to get out on the line. I'm not too smart.
But the women convicted in the Manson family murders are trying to be smart. Now in their early 40s, they make earnest appeals at their parole hearings.
Do you think that Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, Susan Atkins ought to be paroled someday?
I think they should not only be paroled, but I think you should do exactly as they tell you to do.
The parole boards say they're...
Parole board's a bunch of stupid bureaucrats, man, who are laying up on the dollar bill. Take the poison and die in that cell, or say you're full of shit and we'll let you go. You know, so the parole board wants me to go in and kowtow to their reality and say that their reality is the real reality and my reality is really the stupid, dumb reality.
Unless that attitude changes, Manson has little hope for success at his next parole hearing in February 1992. He will then be 57 years old.
Incidentally, Manson's new prison doesn't allow musical instruments, and it's impossible to get drugs. Charlie's doing his time straight. We'll be bringing you a lot more of that interview in the future.
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. There's further patronage information in the video descriptions below. Thanks for all the support and making the channel grow.